Dead by Daylight has a pretty big problem, and this has been an ongoing issue for a very long time, and I think a lot of the community has been feeling this way. Recently, Ottstarva put out a fantastic video where he basically talked about some of the points that the developers in their Ask Me Anything kind of replied to the community with. And he voiced his frustrations with a lot of the things that they said, and he kind of nitpicked at a few things and really kind of showed that realistically speaking, he's a bit burned out from Dead by Daylight. And this is something that happens to most people that play Dead by Daylight for a very long time. And what made this video very significant to me is the reason why he's feeling this way is not necessarily because he's tired of Dead by Daylight themselves, but more so what the developers are doing. And he said it himself, and he said it perfectly, they lack the ambition for certain major things to happen. And now in this video, to summarize, which I'll leave down below, he essentially proclaimed that he has made tons of videos, as we all evidently seen, talking about things that might be too strong in the game, things that need to be changed, or even healthy suggestions to make the game go in a better direction. And at last, there is pretty much no response from the developers, and they do pretty much whatever they're going to do anyways. On top of that, it's a double-edged sword because as he makes this video, if Behavior ever decides to make a change that's relatively similar to the content that he put out, saying that maybe they should do this change, he gets blamed for those changes when in reality, he doesn't necessarily have any power to do so. And I can back this claim up when it comes down to being a fog whisperer. While we do have certain perks, when it comes down to balancing itself, there is little to no response when it comes down to it. We can talk and give our opinions and our ideas, but ultimately, this is pretty much in one ear and out the other. And I need to preface this by saying this is in no way or form encouraging you guys to attack or hate on the devs. This is just more constructive criticism that rightfully needs to be said. I don't want anyone sending any hate to the developers in any way or form, but this is more so to explain to you guys what's going on. Now, I recorded this video yesterday when I originally seen this video, and I was more ranty in it, and I kind of went on a tangent, so I'm going to try to keep it more or less not as ranty with some major points and talk about my feelings towards the video as well as things that can be done and just kind of share my thoughts and views and opinions on everything. Now again, I'll leave Otts' video down below, and as I summarize, essentially he's saying that he is no longer going to be making certain types of content because he knows that it doesn't make a difference. If he makes his content, these changes aren't going to come out anyway, so he's wasting his time and energy, and then if something does come out similarly to that, he gets blamed, and it's just basically a hate fest all around. Now, there's two big takeaways that I got from this. Number one is that it's so heartbreaking to see the face of Dead by Daylight, the person that is so passionate for the game, that wants it to do so well and has been wanting it to do so well for such a long time, just basically having to take such a harsh defeat. And it really sucks, and this is the second part of it, that the person that is publicly connected to the developers as a fog whisperer, the face of Dead by Daylight, one of the most popular Dead by Daylight content creators out there, giving his voice and his opinions on what he believes should make the game better, is basically being ignored. What does that mean for everybody else? The average person that's playing the game, will your voice ever be heard? Do surveys even matter? If someone like Otts is giving them tons and tons of feedback and they're just kind of ignoring it, it really isn't a good look. Recently, someone on my stream asked me essentially, how do I not get burnt out of Dead by Daylight? And typically I give the same answer, which is true. I don't play as competitively, I'm just more so there to chat with chats, and if I lose, I lose. I truly believe if you're constantly playing competitively at this high MMR, you're going to get burnt out when you start losing these games and get frustrated with certain mechanics. But I also said something that I never necessarily spoken about before, and it really is an eye-opener when I realize what I actually said. And that is, I don't really engage in any balanced talks whatsoever. And the reason being is because if I'm debating somebody about balancing talks, no matter what, I'm not going to convince them, they're not going to convince me. You know, maybe we can get some other ideas, but normally when you formulate your own opinion, you're going to stick to that unless there's a very, very convincing amount of evidence, and typically with these online debates that doesn't happen. So everybody will essentially be walking in circles. On top of that, if you have an opinion that people disagree with online, you're pretty much setting yourself up for failure. That's just how the internet is nowadays. You can't have an opinion without getting berated by tons of people for whatever the case may be. Next thing is that, and the biggest one of them all, is that no matter what people say, the devs are ultimately going to make the choice themselves. They're not going to listen to the community and say, okay, maybe this guy has a good idea, or maybe this guy has a good idea, let's do that. Instead, whatever they are rooting their decision in, that's what they're going to do. It might be similar to what someone has said, or it might be completely something different. And we've seen lots of changes like this come out throughout the years, and changes that don't happen whatsoever on things that really need to be changed. But ultimately, I said that I don't talk about balancing because it makes no sense to do so. You'll just burn yourself out way quicker. You're going to argue with people, and the devs are still going to do what they do. And when you put that into perspective, that sucks. For players that are dedicating so much time into the game to essentially not get heard is absolutely terrible. Now, BHVR themselves, they have a team that's dedicated to quality assurance, at play test things, etc. But at the end of the day, the players are the ones that are playing the game the most. Now, everyone's opinion isn't going to be correct. They might be completely off the mark, but it's more understandable to listen to people that have thousands upon thousands of hours, that play night and day, Dead by Daylight, and at least listen to what they have to say. Now, obviously, they have to do this in a valid way. They have to give good criticism. And if you're doing this the right way and you're still not being heard, it sucks. And that's the case with Otts. You know, I have firsthand seen the amount of information, the amount of suggestions, the amount of balancing talks that he has directly told to the developers, and we still don't see a lot of those changes in the game. Now, I'm not saying that his ideas or concepts are 100% right or they're always the right decisions, but it sucks when you don't even get any feedback whatsoever. The fact of the matter is, exactly as he said, the devs are going to do what the devs decide to do. And here's why that's a problem. Number one is that typically when it comes down to it, they're looking at stats. A lot of the things are just black and white as just, okay, here are the stats. This killer's not necessarily doing good. We need to buff them. This add-on's overused. We need to nerf it. And while this can work in certain cases, in a lot of cases, if you're not actually playing the game, stats don't necessarily equate to what's happening. Now, they have been on record saying that there's tons of other things that goes into their decision making, but ultimately stats are really going to sway what you're going to do. For example, if only 1% of the players are playing the twins, you can really push that rework all the way till next year, because who's playing the twins? Who cares? But now if everybody's playing, let's say, the Legion or something like that, I don't know, you can be like, all right, maybe we need to give changes to Legion a little bit quicker because there's a lot of people playing Legion, so let's just push everything else, put it on the back burner, and work about the Legion. This seems to be happening more often than not, and these are the kind of decisions that should not be affected by statistics. The same can be said with certain changes that just weren't required. We've seen killers like the Hillbilly get nerfed into the ground for what? The only thing it has to be stats. Now, again, as I said, they don't always make these decisions based on statistics, but it is heavily implied that they do so. The next thing is that there are tons of different people and leads on the developer team. And as the years goes on, there's a lot of these developers that slowly move to different places. And that's just how the industry works. That's just how it is. You know, certain devs will stick on a team. They might love the team and they will go on to a different project with a different company for whatever reason it may be. From conversations with developers, I've heard quite a lot that you can be offered such better rates and such better pay at other companies that you might leave for a few years and then come back at a certain point just to get some more cash, which, I mean, go for it. It's your career. It's the right thing to do. You have to better your own future, 100% for that. So that pretty much is where the issue comes in. While one developer that's leading a team might have a certain vision and a certain idea of what they want to do, if they end up leaving that project and they're replaced by somebody else, especially if they're coming outside, or maybe they now have the official say, they might have not agreed with what that lead was saying, and then things can take a completely different direction. I spoke about this in my previous video where I talked about MMR, and I said that internally I feel that the devs might have some conflicts on if the game is casual or competitive, and that's why we see changes sometimes that are just a little bit all over the place. We see changes that might heavily balance on the competitive side, which makes sense, sure, if you want to do that, but then we might see some changes that are so much more so for the casual side. So it's utterly confusing sometimes why these changes are being made, and ultimately it boils down to whoever's leading these changes. And the last problem is, as I said, they're not taking feedback from the community itself. While we do have these surveys, there's no feedback to us saying, okay, majority of the people said that this is one of the big focuses that we need to look into, so this is what we're going to prioritize. Instead, we're just kind of given whatever we have in the developer updates, and then we just have to take it as face value. I want to extend this to the PTBs themselves as well. Initially, when I played in the PTBs, I thought this was for the developers to gather our honest reactions with everything and then take into consideration balancing and changing and things that need to be happening. Then when I realized how it kind of works and that, this is already submitted to come out to Sony and Microsoft platforms, and more than likely we're going to get the same thing, I realized that this was just more so to see any hidden bugs that they didn't detect, so then in the week after it's fully released, they can just put out a patch. It was never for us to give our opinions on the characters, and maybe they do collect bits and pieces of information here, but there's been so many PTBs where we said this cannot be touched, or this cannot be changed, or this is pretty good, pretty nice where it's at, and then it ends up getting changed or not changed, whatever the case may be, So it just sucks in general, is the best way to put it. And just rooting this all back together, I really am truly sad and heartbroken for Otz that he feels this way, because I see it firsthand too. I've seen how much ideas and suggestions that he's given, and just to see him so defeated is so heartbreaking. Otz really is the face of the community. He spends hours upon hours, as you guys have seen, making videos, making content, and just to essentially feel that you're not being heard and none of the things you're saying or doing, it just sucks. It really does suck, especially when you know that they're right there to listen to you and you don't get any feedback. You don't hear anything. And this has been going on for years. This is why majority of the community ends up leaving the game, content creators alike, because you just feel like you aren't being heard. And while sometimes they do interact with the community and they've worked on being more transparent, as I mentioned, I feel like internally, there's just a lot of struggles as well. For example, on my Twitter, when I asked people, hey, give me some questions to ask the developers, if you could ask them one question, what would it be? We received a whopping ton of answers with Myers changes, with changes that were going to come out in the future, with ideas and suggestions. I even talked about the FOMO stuff on the Prestige Rewards, which kind of led into a lot of things, canceling each other out. Like, it didn't make sense from things that they were priorly saying. Then we got their Ask Me Anything, and the entire tune is shifted. We now get the classic soon TM, we get the years answer, and it shows that there's different people responding to different things, and everyone's not on the same page. When you look at the Twitter comments and the Twitter replies, they're not on the same page with everyone that's on the Ask Me Anything page. So we're getting mixed answers. The cherry on top for all of this is in this Ask Me Anything. One of the questions was essentially talking about people basically dying on first hook on purpose, and they blatantly said that they have no idea what to do and there's no solution. That really sucks, because they're basically admitting their own defeat and they're like, yeah, we don't know what to do, so yeah, so be it. Now, regardless if you think this is an issue or not, I'm not here to debate that, but just hearing the dev team saying, there's an issue, we know it's an issue, we don't know how to fix it, so it is what it is so bad. It's so bad, because I'm sure as a community, people will be jumping to give them any ideas or suggestions that they might even try out, and maybe it actually works. Now, I'm not saying these ideas will be foolproof, this is what they need to do, but how much better would it have been if they said, listen, we've tried tackling this problem, but we're running out of ideas and we don't necessarily know what to do. However, we've been reading a lot of the community ideas and suggestions, and we're going to be testing some of those out, and we'll update you guys about this on the future. There's no ETA on when this will happen, but we appreciate the feedback you guys are giving us. That would have been substantially better than saying, hey, we pretty much know this is an issue, but we can't really solve it, so it is what it is. It just sounds terrible. Another thing that they mentioned was talking about the loadouts, seeing that pretty much in your lobby. For the survivors only, the killers won't see your loadouts. And they basically said that this would take years in order to come into the game, which again is an answer that you don't necessarily want to hear. You know, these small, tiny updates essentially go such a long way, and it shows the passion, it shows the enthusiasm, it shows the drive that they can have. If something needs to be done, you'll find a way to get it done ASAP. And I'm not saying that it's easy to do their job and things should be prioritized differently, whatever the case may be. It just really does suck hearing answers like that overall. Now, I'm ranting on a little bit more, and that's going into a whole different debate and a whole different argument, which I won't touch too much on now. We'll talk about that later. But it just overall sucks. It just sucks that they don't necessarily listen to the community when it comes down to balance changes. They do what they want to do at the end of the day, and the players are the ones that are playing the game the most. Not everybody's going to have the right opinion, but it would be nice just to have at least some recognition of being heard. I think a good solution moving forward of what they could do is playtest certain updates and certain changes to a small, select set amount of people. Whether that is your fog whisperers, whether that is content creators, or maybe players that are on certain platforms with tons of hours. Maybe do it the opposite way where it's more new players to really test out these ideas, because these are the people that are actually playing your game that can give you good, genuine feedback that you know won't just be, you know, rash decisions or angry comments that will try to help you make it better. And these are the changes and the things that they need to do in order to implement in order to ensure the longevity of Dead by Daylight. I also mentioned in my previous MMR video that Dead by Daylight has been stagnant in its growth, at least according to the Steam charts. They are at the same 30,000 average for years now, and there's a lot of different things that affect this, MMR included, but this is one of the things that also affects it as well. Just the balancing and the changes that they either do that don't necessarily align with the community's views, or that they don't do and the community has been asking forever. I mean, how long have we been asking for Alchemist Ring to be nerfed on the Blight, you know? And I'm a killer main, you know, we've been waiting for these changes for such a long time. There's certain things that are always just pushed to the back burner, and the feedback that we've been given goes in one ear and out the other with no idea on where our feedback is going. Overall, pretty much rant is gonna be over here. All I'm trying to say is that it sucks. It sucks for Otz. I really do feel bad for him, and it really is an eye-opener again. You know, I've kind of been in this boat myself where I just kind of detached myself from balance talks. The last time I probably talked about balance was maybe just a few comments here and there, but a dedicated video talking about healthy changes that need to be incorporated into the game, it's been a while. You know, I don't really put the time and effort into it because, as Otz said in his video, chances are you're not going to be heard anyways, and if anything is going to change that's remotely similar to your idea, you're just going to get berated with hate. It sucks overall, and I hope that the devs, while they continue to, you know, be more transparent with everybody, also will tell us what's going on. Are they actually listening to things, and maybe make some of these changes that I mentioned. In a video that I'll put up tomorrow, I'll talk more about some just random changes they can make, more so nice little changes that they can do in 2024, not necessarily with balancing, but just changes in general, and give a little bit more feedback on some of the ideas and concepts that I messed with and talked about today. For now, though, that is pretty much my rant over. Again, this isn't to send any hate towards the developers. The developers are fantastic. They do indeed do a good job. It's just at certain times, their decisions may not align with the communities, and certain times they might need to listen to them a little bit more. That being said, though, as always, I'm the king. I tip my crown to you guys, and we'll see you in the fog.